What happens when a corrupt officer mocks a starving orphan and kicks his last hope into the dirt? Officer Reyes thought he was king of the street, but a silent stranger in white knew his darkest secrets. The truth exposed that night changed everything. "Hey, officer, please leave something. My little brother is very sick. He is in the hospital now. We need every single peso." 10-year-old Juanito pleaded softly. He held his woven basket tightly. It was filled with old plastic bottles. He collected them all day in Santa Ana. The Manila sun was heavy and sticky. His dirt-streaked face was covered in sweat. His thin flip-flops were ready to break. Have you ever felt the weight of the world on small shoulders? It is a heavy burden for a child. Then came Police Officer Reyes. His badge reflected the dying orange sunlight. He had a very big ego. He saw Juanito working here for weeks. Today, he wanted to show his power. "You know the rules, kid," Reyes smirked. "The sidewalk must stay clear. No selling during the rush hour." A few shoppers paused to watch. They knew Reyes was a hard man, but a stranger stood nearby. He wore a simple white shirt and sandals. He had a sun-weathered face and calm eyes. This man saw everything. The bottles were not worth millions, but they meant medicine for Juanito's brother. The boy was only 6 years old. He was fighting a very bad fever. The hospital bill was 15,000 pesos. Their grandmother washed clothes for pennies. This basket was their only hope. 2 years ago, they had a farm. Then the typhoons took everything away. Their father died soon after. Now they survived on what others threw away. Will justice find a way into these dark streets? Do you believe that God sees the tears of the poor? Officer Reyes did not care about the boy's sick brother. He only cared about the power he held. He looked at the woven basket like it was trash. With a sudden move, he kicked it hard. The plastic bottles scattered across the cracked concrete. They made a hollow sound as they rolled into the dirty gutter. "I will take this basket now," Reyes barked. "Consider it a fee for your many troubles, a lesson in civic duty for you." He leaned down very close to Juanito. The boy could see a small coffee stain on the officer's collar. He could smell the cold arrogance in his breath. "Next time, stay out of my sight after 4 o'clock. Do you understand?" Juanito stood frozen as his eyes filled with hot tears. His small shoulders shook with a silent sob. He knew he could not fight a man with a badge and a gun. He slowly reached down to grab his empty burlap sack. He left the trampled bottles and the tipped-over basket behind. He walked away into the shadows of the market. He did not know how to face his Lola. He had no money for the life-saving medicine. The sun was almost gone now. The darkness of the city felt like a heavy blanket over his heart. Officer Reyes felt proud of his work. He brushed some dust off his blue uniform. He adjusted his belt and looked around for more victims. He did not notice the man in the white shirt following him. This man walked with a steady and quiet pace. He did not look like a threat, but his presence was heavy. Reyes turned a corner near a bright Jollibee sign. The neon lights flickered over his polished boots. Something is about to change for this man who thinks he is a king. If you believe that no one is above the laws of God, please support this story with a like and subscribe to our channel. The stranger stepped out from the shadows. "You dropped something back there, officer," the man said. His voice was not loud, but it cut through the noise of the traffic. Reyes stopped and patted his pockets quickly. "I didn't drop anything. Move along, mister," he snapped. The stranger shook his head slowly. "I do not mean your keys or your wallet. I mean your integrity." Reyes laughed, but it was a dry and nervous sound. "Who are you to talk to me like that? I am doing my job." The man looked at the officer with eyes that saw everything. "Your wallet is very full today, Ricardo. 15,000 pesos from the market stalls, and 2,000 more from the old woman's shop. Is that also your job?" Reyes went cold. His heart began to race against his ribs. These were his secret bribes. No one was supposed to know the exact numbers. The truth was starting to come into the light. Reyes felt a cold sweat prickle his neck under the stiff collar of his uniform. The stranger's voice was as calm as the surface of a mountain lake, but every word hit like a hammer. "How do you know those names? How do you know the amounts?" the officer stammered. He tried to reach for his handcuffs, but his arm felt strangely heavy, as if the air itself had turned to lead. The man in the simple shirt didn't move. He didn't even raise his hand. He just looked at Reyes with a profound sadness. "I know because the cries of the widow and the orphan do not stop at the ceiling of their shacks, Ricardo. They reach the ears of the one who created them." The bustling street seemed to fade into the background. The roar of the jeepneys and the smell of fried street food felt miles away. It was just the officer and this mysterious traveler. "You think the badge makes you a king," the stranger continued, stepping closer. "But you are only a servant who has forgotten his master. You took the last basket from a child whose brother gasps for breath in a crowded ward. You think those pesos will buy you peace? They are only fuel for the fire that will consume your secrets." Reyes felt his legs tremble. He looked down at his boots, the ones he had polished so carefully that morning. They looked dull now, covered in the gray dust of the city. The stranger reached out and gently touched the silver badge on Reyes's chest. The metal felt ice cold, then suddenly burning hot. "This badge is for protection, not for plunder. Every peso you stole is a stone around your neck." Reyes tried to look away, but he couldn't. He saw his own life flashing before him, not the hero he pretended to be, but the man who took bribes from the fishmongers and threatened the fruit sellers. He saw the face of Juanito, the boy's eyes filled with a terror that no child should ever know. The weight of his hidden life was becoming unbearable. He felt as if the very ground was ready to open up and swallow his lies. The stranger's presence was like a mirror, reflecting a soul that had grown dark with greed. There was no escape from this light. The truth was no longer a whisper, it was a deafening roar in his ears. Reyes gasped for air, his hand clutching the empty basket he still carried, which now felt as heavy as a mountain of lead. Is there a limit to how much a person can hide before the truth breaks them? If you believe that light always finds its way into the darkest corners, please like this video and subscribe to join our community of faith. "What do you want from me?" Reyes finally whispered, his voice cracking. I can give it back. I can make it right." The stranger smiled, but it was a smile of deep mercy, not triumph. Repentance is not just a word, Ricardo. It is a turning. It is a long walk back to the person you were meant to be. But the time for hiding is over. The sun has set on your secrets. And now, the dawn must bring the truth, no matter how much it hurts. The man turned his gaze toward the hospital in the distance, where a small boy was fighting for his life. The child needs more than your excuses. He needs the justice you swore to uphold. The stranger's words lingered in the humid air like a divine sentence. Reyes felt as if his heavy police belt was tightening around his waist, choking his breath. He looked at the woven basket in his hand, the one he had stolen from Juanito. It felt impossibly heavy now. He tried to speak, but his throat was dry like the dust of the Santa Ana streets. The stranger did not wait for an answer. He simply turned and began to walk away, his simple white shirt glowing softly against the neon lights of the city. Reyes stood alone for a long minute. The noise of the Manila traffic returned, but it sounded different now. It sounded like 1,000 voices accusing him. He walked back toward his patrol car, his steps slow and uneven. Every person he passed seemed to know his secret. He saw a street vendor selling mangoes and remembered how he had overcharged her last week. He saw a group of children playing near a fountain and thought of Juanito's brother in the hospital. The guilt was no longer a quiet whisper in the back of his mind. It was a physical weight on his chest. He reached his car and sat inside, staring at the polished badge in the rearview mirror. The face looking back at him was that of a stranger, a man who had traded his soul for paper bills and a false sense of power. In the silence of the car, he opened his hidden compartment. There it was, the thick envelope of dirty money, 18,000 pesos. It was more than most families in this district saw in a year. It was the price of his integrity. He remembered the stranger's eyes that didn't hate him, but eyes that expected more from him. He realized that the man in the white shirt didn't come to destroy him, but to show him how destroyed he already was. The truth was a mirror, and Reyes could no longer look away. He thought of the hospital, the sterile smell of the wards, and the small boy fighting for every breath. He thought of the medicine that 18,000 pesos could buy. A choice was forming in his heart, a quiet but sharp decision. The power he once felt from his badge was gone, replaced by a desperate need to find a way back to the light. Is it ever too late to turn back and fix the wrongs we have done? If you believe that God gives every soul a chance for true repentance, please support this story with a like and subscribe to our channel. Reyes started the engine. He didn't head toward the station or his comfortable apartment. He drove toward the shadows where he had last seen the boy. He needed to find Juanito, He needed to return what was stolen, and perhaps find a way to return the man he used to be before the greed took over. The streets were dark, but for the first time in years, he felt he was finally seeing clearly. Reyes drove through the narrow, flooded alleys of the district. The heavy smell of the Pasig River mixed with the smoke of street grills. His eyes searched every dark corner, every pile of trash where a child might hide. Finally, he saw a small figure sitting on a rusted metal bench. It was Juanito. The boy looked tiny against the massive concrete walls of the city. He was staring at the ground, his empty burlap sack folded neatly on his knees. In his hand, he held a small wooden rosary, his fingers moving slowly over the smooth beads. The officer stopped the car and stepped out. The silence between them was heavy. Juanito looked up, his eyes widening in fear. He began to stand, ready to run again. "Wait, Juanito, please," Reyes called out. His voice was no longer the bark of a commander. It was the plea of a man drowning in his own shame. He reached into the back seat and pulled out the woven basket. It was slightly bent, but still strong. He walked toward the boy and placed it on the bench between them. I brought this back. I should not have taken it." Juanito looked at the basket, then at the officer. He saw that Reyes's hands were shaking. This was not the man from the market. This was someone broken. Reyes reached into his pocket and pulled out the thick envelope. The 18,000 pesos, the weight of his sin. "Take this too," Reyes whispered. "For your brother, for the hospital. It is not mine. It never was." The boy's mouth hung open. He didn't reach for the money. He just looked at Reyes with a confusion that hurt more than any slap. The air felt still, as if the whole city was holding its breath. In that moment, the badge on Reyes's chest felt like a hot coal. He realized that giving the money wasn't enough to fix his soul, but it was the only way to start. The truth has a way of stripping us down to who we really are. If you believe that every act of repentance brings us closer to God's mercy, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. "Why?" Juanito finally asked, his voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. "Why are you doing this now, officer?" Reyes looked at the boy, then at the shadows where the stranger in the white shirt had vanished. "Because a man reminded me that I am a servant, not a master," Reyes replied softly. He knelt down on the dirty pavement, level with the child. "I have been lost for a very long time, Juanito. I am trying to find my way home." He pushed the envelope into the boy's small, hesitant hands. The paper felt crisp, but to Reyes, it felt like the heaviest thing he had ever carried. The next morning, the heat in Santa Ana felt different. It was still heavy, but the air carried a sense of waiting. Officer Reyes did not go to his usual post at the wet market. Instead, he walked into the police headquarters. His uniform was pressed, but his face looked older, as if he had lived 10 years in a single night. He carried a thick folder and a small digital recorder. He didn't look at his colleagues who joked about their morning coffee. He walked straight to the captain's office. "I have something to report, sir," Reyes said. His voice was steady, devoid of its usual arrogance. "Not a crime by a citizen, but a series of crimes by an officer. Myself." The captain looked up, confused. But Reyes began to speak. He laid out everything. The 15,000 pesos from the market stalls, the protection money from the fruit vendors, the names, the dates, and the exact amounts. He spoke about Juanito and the stolen basket. Outside the glass window, the other officers stopped talking. They watched in silence as their toughest sergeant dismantled his own life. Reyes felt a strange peace with every word. It was the truth coming into the light that the stranger had promised. He wasn't being caught. He was surrendering. He handed over the envelope he had recovered, money he had replaced from his own savings, to ensure the evidence was complete. The consequences were immediate. The handcuffs felt cold on his wrists, but they didn't feel like a burden. They felt like the first honest thing he had worn in years. As he was led out, he saw the man in the white shirt standing near the entrance. The stranger didn't say a word. He simply nodded once, a gesture of recognition. He wasn't there to judge the prisoner. He was there to witness the birth of a man. Meanwhile, at the government hospital, a miracle of a different kind was happening. Juanito stood by his brother's bed. The doctor had just finished a checkup. "The fever is breaking," the doctor smiled, looking at the receipts for the expensive medicine that had been paid in full that morning. "He is a fighter, this little one." Juanito gripped the edge of the bed, his heart overflowing. He thought of the officers' shaking hands and the stranger's calm eyes. He realized that justice didn't always look like a sword. Sometimes it looked like a returned basket and a broken man finding his soul. The news spread through the wet market like a cooling breeze. The vendors talked about the officer who confessed. They talked about the secret donor who cleared the hospital bills for the orphans. The atmosphere of fear that Reyes had built for 2 years vanished in a single morning. The structures of greed had collapsed, not through violence, but through the simple power of a man finally telling the truth. Do you believe that one honest act can tear down a kingdom of lies? If you see the hand of God in this transformation, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Reyes sat in his holding cell, watching the sunset through the barred window. He had lost his job, his reputation, and his freedom. But as he closed his eyes, he realized he could finally breathe. The weight was gone. He was no longer a king of a dirty corner. He was a man who had been found. In the quiet of the cell, he whispered a small "thank you" to the man in the white shirt, knowing that his long walk home had finally begun. A week passed since the heavy gates of the prison closed behind Ricardo Reyes. The wet market of Santa Ana felt different, lighter, as if a thick smoke had finally cleared. Juanito walked through the stalls, no longer hiding in the shadows. In his hand, he carried the same woven basket, now repaired with colorful plastic strips. It was filled with fresh mangoes and bread. His younger brother, Totoy, walked beside him, his skin no longer pale from the fever. They were heading to the hospital to bring a small gift to the nurses who had saved Totoy's life. Juanito stopped at the corner where he once lost everything. He looked at the spot where the officer had kicked his dreams into the gutter. Instead of anger, he felt a strange, quiet peace. He remembered the man in the white shirt. He hadn't seen him since that morning at the police station, but he felt his presence in every act of kindness he now witnessed. The market vendors no longer looked over their shoulders. They shared stories and laughed. Even the new officer on duty was a quiet man who helped an old woman carry her heavy bags of rice. The boy sat on the same rusted bench where he had received the envelope of money. He touched the wood, feeling the warmth of the sun. He realized that the greatest miracle wasn't the 18,000 pesos. It was the change in a man's heart. He whispered a short prayer for Ricardo Reyes, asking that the former officer would find strength in his dark cell. Juanito knew that true freedom didn't mean being outside of walls. It meant having a heart that was no longer a prisoner to greed or fear. The symbol of his struggle, the basket, was now a symbol of a new beginning. Every bottle he collected now went toward his brother's school books. They were no longer just surviving. They were building a life. The world was still hard, and the sun was still hot, but they were not alone. Does this story remind you that even the most broken things can be made whole by the truth? If you believe that God's light can reach anyone, anywhere, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. As the sun began to set, painting the Manila Bay in gold, Juanito saw a figure walking in the distance, a man in a simple white shirt and sandals, moving toward the outskirts of the city. Juanito waved, but the man was already merging into the crowd of workers going home. The boy smiled and picked up his basket. He had work to do, and for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid of the coming night. He knew that even in the dark, a quiet light was watching over them all. Months passed, and the corner in Santa Ana became a place of quiet hope. Juanito's brother, Totoy, was back at school, his laughter echoing through their small home. They no longer lived in fear of the heavy boots of Officer Reyes. The woven basket was now full of fresh calamansi and pandesal, sold to neighbors who respected the boy's hard work. Juanito often thought about the man in the white shirt. He realized that the stranger didn't just save his brother's life. He saved a soul that was rotting behind a silver badge. Even in a cell, Ricardo Reyes was finally beginning to understand what it meant to be truly clean. Justice in the city of Manila is often loud and violent, but this change was silent. It was the sound of a heart breaking open to let the light in. The street vendors still talk about the night the truth walked the streets in sandals. They say that God doesn't always send lightning to strike down the wicked. Sometimes, he just sends a man to stand in the light and wait for the shadows to flee. Juanito looked at his repaired basket and smiled. He knew that as long as he walked with honesty, he was never truly alone on these crowded streets. The story of the orphan and the officer became a lesson for everyone in the district. It taught them that power is a loan from God, and it must be paid back with service. Juanito's Lola often says that the most expensive medicine wasn't in the envelope. It was the mercy that allowed a sinner to turn back and a child to keep his faith. The city continues to hum with life, but on that one corner, the air feels just a little bit sweeter, a reminder that peace is the fruit of justice and quiet courage. If this story reminded you that God sees every hidden deed and acts in His perfect time, please support it. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and write the word faith in the comments if you believe that the truth will always set us free.